Greetings, everyone. We are ready for your fourth presentation on this month of stress management and self-care. So this is balance, leisure, and self-care. And our guest speaker for today is Dr. Mary Worden. And Mary, you're talking about something that all of us need and we need to hear. So I got my cup of tea and I'm just kind of gonna sit back. You don't get to enjoy and leisure as much as I get to do leisure right now. So we welcome you and back again. We saw you last semester and this semester as well. And so welcome. We're glad that you're here.
Thank you. Nice to be with everyone. Let me share my screen. Here we go. All right.
Yes.
So balance, leisure, and self-care. So I like this picture. It kind of gives an image of a lot of times we feel like we are balancing a lot of plates or bowls or tasks. We want to take a little bit of time today just to open that up and see how we might do balance perhaps a little differently and understand leisure and self-care. So I want to start with this.
Kind of Zen-like. I was just going to say it's kind of Zen-like. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm going to start with the story. So the story is that an elder was talking to his grandfather or his granddaughter and said, inside everyone, there are two wolves, and one wolf is a good wolf and includes things like bravery and strength and kindness. And inside the other wolf is a bad wolf, and inside of that is greed and hatred and resentment. And she thought about it for a little bit and she said, well, grandfather, which one wins the fight? And the grandfather says, the one you feed is the one that wins. Right? Mm-hmm. So we have within us a lot of energy, a lot of strength, a lot of things we're trying to balance. What we'll do today, it's not letting me progress. Oh, all right, there we are. So here we go, overview. We'll talk about balance, we'll talk about leisure and spirituality, understand more about the practice of self-care, and then a period of wrap-up.
Nice.
So we think of balance initially as, we used to say body, mind, spirit, right? But we also know that relationships are also a very big part of balance, okay? Yeah. And so this is one way to conceptualize that. Other people, for example, the National Wellness Institute talks about 6 core dimensions of wellness, which they talk about balance. So occupational, which we would call ministry, physical, social, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional. And the thing to remember is that each person has to find their own balance, right? And so what is balance for me in the life that I have, in the personality that I have, is maybe different than what it is for someone else. But we all need balance. Some examples from scripture, just from the very beginning, right? With the creation of the world, God creates the world in 6 days and rests on the 7th, okay? And so from the beginning, there's a sense of it's not all about doing, right? We have Jesus goes off to pray by himself after the healings that he does. He takes people he's especially close to for a special experience on the mountaintop. He visits friends at Bethany, Lazarus and Martha and Mary. He goes to a wedding feast, so he participates with his community in celebrations. He goes to Jerusalem for Passover, so he takes part in his religious identity. And even at the cross, he acknowledges his own physical need. I thirst, he says. So balance is paying attention to all of these aspects of our lives. And in particular, we want to focus in for a few minutes on the idea of leisure. So lovely picture. Leisure, we think about as the discretionary time, what some people say. So it's things that are not taken up with ministry or work or other kinds of obligations. And so many of us might feel, I'm so busy, I don't have energy for anything else, right? That might be a sign that we're a little bit out of balance. We feel like the only thing I can do is just watch TV for the evening because my brain is shot, right? So leisure, I want to open this up a little bit with some writers in this area that look at it from a spirituality point of view. So one of the first is Reichen, who talks about stewardship, leisure as stewardship of our own bodies that God gives us. So it's a gift from God, providing rest, relaxation, enjoyment, physical and psychic health. It gives an opportunity to rediscover our values. It can lead to wholeness, gratitude, self-expression, creativity, personal growth. These all sound like great things, right? But we know we don't always use leisure in that way. And so another author, Heinzman, talks about some of the problems that happen with leisure. And he says that there can be idolatry or compulsion. So this is perhaps we don't know what to do if we're not working, if we're not doing our ministry. And so we might take on more to fill that time. Or there may be a compulsion, something that was a hobby that becomes an obsession, right? So all the free time I have goes into this one thing, and I neglect maybe some other aspects of my life or my personality. Hedonism would be the seeking excessive pleasure, right, as opposed to a sort of a balanced way of looking at refreshing the whole physical and mental self. And utilitarianism is the idea that rest, the sole purpose of rest is to just give us more strength so that we can be more productive when we are working, right? And he says that that's really a false idea as well. But we often think that, like, I can't do my work if I don't get my rest, right? So that the work is the point where, you know, what I'm proposing is that the balance is the point. Okay. And go again. So Reichen says we might spend leisure on a number of different things, cultural pursuits such as theater or art or music, recreation, playing games or sports, enjoying activity outside, entertainment, movie, TVs, media, hobbies such as perhaps sewing or photography or my favorite, fishing, or whatever kind of pastime there is, right? Social activity. So it might be going to a gathering, a party. It might be learning a new dance. It could be anything like that. And so what he says is it's not just about being free to do what you want with your non-work time. It's more about developing a sense of quality of life. And so we talk about this idea of Sabbath. So with that seventh day, when God rested, eventually becomes known as the Sabbath or Shabbat, right? And so, and in Exodus, it's given as one of the commandments to keep holy the Sabbath day. On all the other days you can work, but on the Sabbath, let yourself rest, okay? So a one-day break from work, but an invitation to experience God and rejoice in God's creation, okay? And so a lot of people, even people not of religious orientation have started to take back this idea of Sabbath and to give themselves a break and a rest one day a week, where they might unplug from their screens, right? You connecting, they would say, with their tribe. Who are those people?
Mm-hmm.
Minimizing activities or keeping them simple, like walking, visiting, sharing meals, and don't cause others to have to work, right? So when everything used to be closed on Sundays, you know, we didn't go out and shop, right? We didn't go out to a movie, and we also didn't cause a shop employee to have to work on a Sunday, or a movie proprietor to have a Sunday. Now they have a business, but the idea was, we rest that others may rest. It's part of that whole vision.
Mm.
Okay. Terry Hershey wrote a book called The Power of Pause, Becoming More by Doing Less. And it goes through different seasons of the year with just this idea of recovering this sense of balance, this sense of being rather than doing. And he says it's about the choices that we make. So choosing to pay attention, to be centered, to say yes in that moment, no to urgency, which is what a lot of our lives, my life feels like, and I'm guessing a lot of people's lives feel like. This has to be done yesterday, right?
Yes.
And so, yes, you've been there, Michelle.
Yeah.
Listen with the whole self, right? And see and hear, taste, touch, and smell. And we notice what has always been there. But if we don't slow down, we don't see it, right? So if you've had that experience of, oh, the sky was beautiful tonight, and for once I just stayed in my car and watched the sun go down, right? Not tonight, but you know what I'm saying. That occasionally we get caught up in something that ordinarily we're just like, okay, on to the next thing, right? And so it's about owning and embracing our own uniqueness. We want to move into this. So the choices that we make, we might talk about as self-care, the decisions, the way that we behave differently, think differently, and engage differently. So self-care, there are lots of definitions. I'm just going to say it's practices to promote balance and well-being. So these are the things that we do, or maybe the things that we let go of. Okay. So some stories. Mary, we hear about Mary pondering things in her heart. So she's taking some meditation time. Jesus teaches in the temple as a child, and so it's not simply that he did that, but remember what he said. Didn't you know that I have to be about my Father's work? And so even if you're displeasing some people or surprising some people or following your truth, that may need to, self-care might be standing up for yourself, right? Jesus, as I mentioned before, spends time with those close friends, Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. And another story from a different tradition that I love is this proverb: fall down 7 times, get up 8. Right. So just we do self-care as a preventative to help us on our way, but also really important when we're feeling depleted or stressed. Okay. And so that's where I think of this: fall down 7 times, get up 8. Just keep going. Right. Tammy Foreman is had an article that I really enjoyed, and because sometimes people say, well, self-care, that's for rich people or white people or mainstream. That's just kind of like do your own thing. But she says it's a deep and personal understanding of your priorities. Again, this is the idea of balance. What's important, right? And so she says people might think it's about, I'm going to have the nicest experience of sleep by having these 1,000-count sheet sets, right? These luxury sheets. And really what it might be is just giving yourself a chance to go to sleep at a reasonable time, right? Having good sleep hygiene, relaxing yourself. So getting enough rest instead of like I know I should go to bed, but I just want to watch one more thing, or I just want to look at one more thing on my phone. And so the discipline to do the things that are helpful is also self-care. It's not simply, well, I feel like doing this, so I'm going to do it. It's also taking awareness of our own selves, doing work that matters, and even setting a boundary by saying no, right? Sometimes we get ourselves all twisted up because we say yes when we really mean no. And so self-care might be developing that ability to say no, even if it displeases some people. This is a little model from one of the first classes I taught in psychology over 25 years ago, but I love it so much I put it in every presentation I give if it's possible. So
That's
this
good.
is a way of thinking about managing stress, right? And so these are different ways of self-care. The first two, we could say, relate more to the mind, right? When we see we have some kind of stress, do we decide to interpret that as a challenge or as a threat? Because it could be either one, right? A challenge or a threat. Are we typically a more optimistic person or pessimistic, right? And we might say, well, that's just the way I am, but that is something that can be cultivated as well. So that's a mental habit, just like the two wolves, right? Which wolf are you going to feed? Okay. In terms of the body, these are activities, personal habits, right? So do you get exercise or physical activity, good nutrition, staying away from dangerous substances, taking time for relaxation, minimizing use of screens. So screens would be your phone, your tablet, your television, computer. Most people need these for their lives, but many people feel like they've begun to take over, right? So we have this sort of the positive side on the left side and more negative habits on the right. So inactivity, poor nutrition, et cetera. In terms of relationships, do we have strong support networks? Are we altruistic? Are we connected with people, or are we more isolated? Are we more just focused in on ourselves? And in terms of spirit, meditation, worship, prayer, reading, versus lack of these practices. And so the bottom part of this, that is not on the chart, is the ones on the left lead toward more physical health and well-being. The ones on the right lead a person to illness, right? More likelihood of illness. So these kinds of practices reach all the parts of us, but they, so just as an example of some of the things that you might think through for yourself. We are from all different cultures, right? The people that are participating in this are from all different cultures. I wasn't able to find things for all the locations that you're from, but I think it would be a profitable discussion maybe within your communities of how your culture views this. But I found a few that I thought were interesting. So in the Czech Republic, hiking is such a big deal. They have a very well organized system of trails. They're all connected. It's just endorsed through the whole society. And so that kind of activity is just part of their way of life. In Japan, pardon me?
Sorry. I said, yay, Czech.
Yay, Czech. Oh yeah, you and I are both a bit Czech. So yeah.
Yeah, they're both Czech, yeah.
So Japan has this tradition of forest bathing. So encountering and living into that experience of nature, right? Russia and lots of other places have steam baths or shared bath experiences. Persia uses rose water for skin care, for relaxation. I meant to practice this. Denmark has hygge, something like that. It's the idea of a sense of coziness. So being together with people, maybe with a campfire, maybe with some candles, warm drinks, just that sense of warmth and coziness is a part of their culture that a lot of people are trying to take on. A few more in India, there's such a thing as hasya yoga or laughter yoga. So it's the laughing becomes a part of that whole yoga practice. In Argentina, there are more psychologists per capita than in anywhere in the world, even Chicago, which has a lot. But Argentina, so talk therapy is a very common way of self-care that is not stigmatized at all in Argentina, in Latin America, in most cases.
Nice.
So Latin America and Spain, this idea of siesta, that we take a break, and not so we can do other things, right? But to enjoy time with family, to rest, to feed ourselves, so that that's built-in part of the culture. Brazil, this was from a study that was done where people did focus groups, and these were the things that kind of came up within that culture. Practices that promoted friendships, volunteer work, psychotherapy again, spirituality, breathing exercises, emotional regulation, dialogue, so that all of these things within their culture were seen as ways of self-care. In conclusion, okay, so the big three, we all need balance, but it's unique to each of us. But it takes some intentionality to really figure where that balance is. And so the question I have right below it, what areas of my life seem to be in balance and out of balance right now? And how could I make a shift to regain balance? Okay. Leisure is a gift of God. And so our question is, how do I use my non-ministry time? And what might be some new ways that I could make use of this gift for enrichment, appreciation, fulfillment, that developing more of that quality of life? And lastly, self-care is not an indulgence, right? It is a really appropriate way of caring for this gift of ourself, right? Our bodies. What are some ways that I care for my body, mind, spirit, and relationships? And what other kinds of self-care practices would I or would we like to try? So those are the kind of the three questions that I'll invite you all to reflect on and to share with each other on. And I hope that this has been a good introduction or a good way of thinking about some of these ideas.
Excellent, Mary. Thank you. You brought in the essence of our lives together. That we have ministry together, we have community together, and then we have the opportunity to take care of ourselves together, to take care of myself and my own response to all the things that we have in our lives. Our time with God, our prayer time, our meditation, and opportunities to share prayer together. So thank you. Thank you. You have there's some really nice, nuanced ways of looking at things. In other words, just a little shift in our thinking, and we are the better for it. So thank you. Thank you so much. This has been just very good for me personally, because like all of us, we get caught up in ministerial things or things to do, and we don't take care of ourselves as much as we could, wherefore we have balance and leisure and self-care. So thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, I would say one thing. You mentioned this for you, for me too. It was beneficial to kind of look at these things, and it reminds me of another little Zen saying, which is, we teach what we most need to learn, right? And so, these are useful things for, I think, all of us to just pull a little bit of time away. So
that's great.
Enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope that this provokes some great discussions and contemplation with the community.
Yes, thank you. You take care. We'll see you. All right. Bye now.